T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Global Watchman News. My name is Lori Swan. Hope you guys are all doing well. If you are in the live chat, we do ask that you keep it family friendly. There will be moderators in there to make sure that we stay within the terms of service put forth to us by the platforms we're utilizing tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Take a minute, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you know we go live. So it's Sunday night, and we do have a special guest on with us again once a month. We enjoy having her back. We're going to get into a conversation that is going to be, I think, affects everybody. But first off, I do want to say hey to Ernie.
What's up, Lori? What's up, chat? How are y'all doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. How was your week?
Not too bad. Started to do some more work on my back. Did some practice, did some work, for those of you who don't know, I'm a musician. I went back and playing again after a 6-year hiatus, so that's pretty cool. And my back's slowly getting better.
Nice.
My doctor told me to start, working it out more, pushing yourself to see how things are going, which I have been. I've been hurting, but I've been stretching, and I've been keep on going. So, how about yourself?
Doing good, doing good. Just pushing through, and so yeah, glad your back to is doing better. So tonight, we're going to talk with Dr. Joy. If you guys don't know who she is, Dr. Joy is a author. She's a musician. She's a writer, and she happens to be our personal friend here at Global Watchman News. Welcome back to the panel, Dr. Joye Pugh.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Ernie. I look so forward to being on this show. It's like I just look so forward to it. And I love that bumper music. I'm going to tell you, I need to just get a recording of that and let that wake me up every morning. There's something about that bumper music that just gets, I don't know, it just sets the stage of the kinds of things that I feel. And so I've been really excited all day about knowing that this show is coming up tonight and being with you all. You mean the world to me. And, we are watchmen on the wall, and we're trying to really bring some things to the table that people are dealing with to hopefully make them aware that they're not alone. Because I think what we're going to be talking about tonight, I felt like I was alone. I think probably, Laura, you did too. So
yeah, I didn't even know what I was experiencing.
That's what happened to me too. And I'm like, what is the deal? So yes, this is an exciting show, and I sure hope it will be something that will help a lot of people who were like us, not knowing what the deal was. And so, yes, this will be an exciting show for us to do together tonight.
Well, the topic of conversation tonight is narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm going to read you a little bit, kind of set the stage. It says, a healthy, even sometimes inflated sense of self can be a good thing. In fact, some researchers believe those who have somewhat grandiose views of themselves are mentally tougher, less stressed, and less at risk for depression. However, narcissism exists on a spectrum. On one side, it's craving the occasional compliment. On its darkest side, it can creep into pathological territory. Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD, is one of 10 personality disorders recognized in the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health or Mental Disorders. Hallmark signs of NPD read like a laundry list of what not to look for in a significant other: an inflated sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy for others, and a deep need for constant attention or admiration. Now, personally, I can tell you that I've gone through a couple of narcissistic abusive relationships, and I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that he was abusive. I just knew that he was controlling. I just knew that there was times where we would start to argue, and I knew I had a valid point, but at some point he made me forget why I was even angry and turned it around as if I was crazy. So and I'll let Joy, tell her story. But when I found out what Joy was going through this past year and a half, I kind of felt like I wasn't alone. Joy?
The thing about it is I am a person who has a degree in counseling. I mean, I have a master's degree in counseling, and I have counseled a lot of people throughout my lifetime. And I really, when I was in college, we ran across, of course, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual was in its 3rd edition when I was in school. That tells how old I am. And we went through all the different kind of disorders, and typically personality disorders. I mean, there's, like you said, there's like 10 different ones with their just, diagnostic statistical codes so that you can actually put that on forms and stuff and bill for it and those kind of things. But the one thing that we did not really get into, and now that I needed to know all that all these years, was narcissistic personality disorder. And I can remember the professor, when he was talking about these particular disorders, made this particular disorder like Cupid sitting in a pool and staring at himself in the mirror or the water, which was a mirror reflection of him. And that's all he did, was just look at himself, admire himself. And that typically is not what I'm seeing in this particular disorder. And maybe it was a disorder that there was not a lot of information about it. And unfortunately, since we were not really schooled in it, it made me, it's like any kind of red flag that I do. Whenever there's something that there's not a lot of talk about it, or you can't find a lot of information about it in the medical field, it always gives me like a red flag, like the work that I was doing for the pineal gland in this book that is about to come out that I've just written, that I hope will be out in the next month. Trying to find the true nature of something that's kind of been hid from maybe what I would call the general public as far as mental health is concerned. And there may be a real reason, because the more that I experienced it and now realized what I was experiencing, it does play into something that I've always been concerned about, Laura. And that is that in Scripture, we know that when Jesus was here, that he encountered people that were acting very strange and unusual. And some of that included people being like in graveyards and biting and tearing and just doing crazy kinds of things. And what it was that was causing that, what I would call schizophrenic behavior or bipolar behavior, or some kind of behavior that was very strange, was that there was demons inside that person. And one of them had a legion. When Jesus talked to it, it was a legion. And I went back and looked at that, and it was like 2,000 of them in one person. That just blew my mind. And I'm like, if those things were here, when they came out, Jesus called them out. And they talked to Jesus. They knew who he was. They asked him, had he come before the time? They knew him when the people walking on earth didn't even know the Son of God was among us. And the fact is that they were able to run into the pigs, or swine is what Scripture calls it. And then the swine, of course, drown themselves. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to believe Scripture, you've got to believe everything in Scripture. You can't like pick and choose like some people like to do. So demonic possession has been something that I've been very interested for a very long time when I first started doing my books back when I wrote the book Antichrist back in 1999. Because what I felt like was in Scripture that was saying that these things are here with us. They're not of us. And so they're real. And some of this bump in the night, weird things that people experience, the paranormal manifestations, are very real. I mean, the Bible, as I've always said, is the most paranormal book that's ever been written. And it's 100% true. So if that's the case, then these demonic entities are here with us. And so my question was, where are they? Because, you know, I've read all the books, and one of them that was really good was a book that was written by Malachi Martin called Hostage to the Devil. And that's a book that if you're grounded in Scripture, I would suggest you read. And if you're not, you don't need to read it, because it will literally scare you to death. But he was a Vatican exorcist. And these were true stories of what it was like to call these demonic entities out of people, and how many of the priests who attempted to do that and were not, let's say, saved like they needed to be, those entities jumped on them. In some cases, those people died. And when you look back at the movie, The Exorcist, that Linda Blair played in when I was a young girl, that is based on a true, real case. That was not a fake thing. So, you know, I've always wondered, people would say, well, you know, when you're a Christian, you can be oppressed, not possessed, but oppressed. And we know the more that we expose Satan, if you're exposing Satan, you're going to feel that oppression in things happening and whatever. And the one thing that's interesting to me is that when you talk about in Daniel about the watchers, there was the watchers and there were the holy ones. Those watchers are in a spiritual realm around us, and they can see everything that we're doing and know how to make things happen. So when sometimes, you don't realize how things will just be like you stump your toe and then the refrigerator falls apart and then you walk out to the, just little things happen that are bringing you to a feeling like, whoa, I can't take this, all the bad things that's kind of going on around you. The spiritual realm is always attempting to do stuff. And in Scripture also tells us that we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in high places. So the fact that Scripture explains to us about these people who are human like you and I, walking around and this one having 2,000 of them inside was pretty major. Mm-hmm. You really go, again, where are those things hiding out that we're not able to know about them? And one of the things that I found was in looking into this narcissistic personality disorder, that every one of the personality disorders and the mental health problems that people are counseled for or go through clinical, diagnostic capability to determine whatever it is, you can either do a counseling sessions, you can do certain kinds of therapies, and then you can also give certain kind of medication. Some people who are bipolar and things like that are on medication, schizophrenic behavior, that kind of thing. But the one thing that is interesting about narcissistic behavior is that there is no protocol. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering if when I was going through college, because there was no protocol to really help those people, that's why it wasn't really discussed. So that has made me always feel like that in the work that I did with schizophrenics, I always believed that that personality that changed was an entity. And I had a great case study because I had a mentally retarded person who was literally mentally retarded by all the standards of, if you give, the intelligence test too. He qualified as a mentally retarded individual. But yet, when he changed into these schizophrenic personalities, Laura, he was not mentally retarded. Now, you tell me how somebody with a diagnosis using the top of the line intelligence test to qualify somebody for that problem because of their mental capability and intelligence capability, and then they can turn around and become an entity that's got a perfectly normal mindset and what they say and how they act. You can't do that. And so I always believe God has given me the greatest opportunity to see things with my own eyes and experience it, because that was like a big red flag. And immediately when I would deal with this particular person, I would always say, what's going on? I hear this in my head. He was literally hearing things talking to him. And he would get so bad with these other personalities that, we would have to take him down and they would have to give him a shot, and it would knock him out for several days. And then over a course of number of days, he would start coming around. And then as the time built up, the more anxious he got, the quicker he went into those other personalities. And they were totally opposites. They were nothing alike. They were nothing like he was when he was in his, say, let's say, normal body as he normally was. So that made me go, red flag. He's hearing something tell him. And the thing about it, I've never dealt with any schizophrenic that ever told me that something inside their head was saying, hey, you're this great person. Do these great, wonderful things for people. It's always terrible stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's strange because the Catholic Church, and I don't hold them in high regard, by all means, everybody knows that. But back in 2018, they hired 250 additional exorcists to be trained in the church because they said they felt that there was going to be an uptick in demonic possession in the next coming years.
Yes, I read that same because I was interested in all this, and I had that come across my desk too, that they had done that. And I think personally, somebody has always known that every bit of this schizophrenic behavior, this narcissistic behavior, and even some of this bipolar behavior is not something that can be cured by medicine. It can make it suppressed. It can knock them out, just like it did this particular person that I'm telling you about. It can knock them out for a time and bring him back a little bit, but in time, it came back again. Those beings, that personality that was changing like that, there's no doubt in my mind, he was hearing that. He was literally involved with something that was controlling his body and talking to him. And because of that, it was just like, how could this be? I never could find anybody that could explain how that could happen. Right. And then the more that I dug into it, and the fact, like you say, Catholicism is one of those things that's pagan. And like you, I feel the same way about all of that. But the thing is that they have known, Laura, all the time that what we're dealing with are demons.
Yeah, because when you look at the history of the psychiatric and medical field, you see the ties in with the Tavistock Institute and their research and all of these doctors that came over through Project Paperclip after World War II, the creation of the American Medical Association, the creation of the American Psychiatric Council, all these things, they knew exactly what they were dealing with. And because of the pharmaceutical industry, they just decided to start, prescribing petroleum-based medications for people, again, not to cure them, but to make them sicker. And in this case, not really to contain their demons.
You are so right. You have done exactly the same research that I have done. It's amazing. I love to be on your show.
We are sisters from another mister.
I just, there's no doubt in my mind, because what you have just said is spot on. They've known that it's this way the entire time. And the fact that they have tells you that, like we know, there is no cure for this other than trying to get it out.
Right.
And so the Catholic Church knows that. And that's why they know that this is going to become an even greater problem as we move toward the end of days. I mean, clearly we can see this manifestation happening. We are told in Scripture in the days that these things are going to, possess and do and all the stuff that's going to start happening and make it much worse than we ever dreamed. But as usual, in all situations, somebody's trying to make money off of it. And they know that counseling does not help. I was amazed that when Dr. Phil was on TV after I learned, what I was dealing with. And I'm thinking, is there any way I can help this person? Because, that's what I do. It is to try to save somebody and try to make them see the need to change and become a Christian and save, hopefully they'll reach out and try to, reach for Jesus to save their soul for the salvation that they need so they end up in heaven. But I'm thinking, is there something that I can do to help this person really deal with what they're having happened to them. Well, the thing about it is they don't think anything's wrong with them.
I was just going to say the narcissist, it's like the same with a drug addiction. You have to first admit you have a problem in order to receive help. But
Right.
a narcissist doesn't think there's nothing wrong with the narcissist. The problem is with you.
Yes. And that was the thing that was so interesting to me, that when Dr. Phil was saying, to counselors, don't even counsel them. And if it's somebody that you're involved with in a relationship, his comment was to run. That's the only thing he could tell you to do was run. And I'm like, I've always been one of those people when I was working with handicapped people, and I had a lot of people come in because each handicapped person, regardless of the situation, they're unique to themselves. So that's why we always had to formulate individualized, specialized programs, and they were called ISPs, because nobody fit in the same box. They were not like you could put children in the second grade and carry them through the second grade, all of them doing the same kind of things. With handicapped people, everybody's different. So your ISP had to be specific to that individual. And that's the thing about this, is that, and looking at how this situation has set itself up and knowing how it's come about, you go like, oh my gosh, is there something here that we're looking at that nobody's really getting in their mind as to the severeness of what's really happening all around us? And like I say, when I look back and look at the DSM-3 and what I was taught about it, and can clearly see, like you're talking about, that these people who came out of Project Paperclip and all of that were involved with the Germans. Hitler was very much aware, doing his remote viewing sessions and whatever, that these entities really exist. Mm-hmm. And the Catholic Church, again, knows they exist, but somebody's going to make money off it. And I think it's really, really sad that there is no way to fix it. So when I was looking for something to utilize to help somebody, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's nothing. Mm-hmm. Even, like I say, and having the background of looking at individualized people with individualized programs for handicapped people, I could finally come up with something that might help them better themselves or do whatever.
Right. There's some program in another city, somebody's trying something new, there's always breakthroughs. But with narcissistic behavior or narcissistic personality disorder, is anybody even trying to, let me rephrase that. Is narcissistic personality disorder a medical condition, or is it strictly
a personality disorder? It's what they try to say. It's just a personality disorder.
Well,
and I'm like,
with DID or schizophrenia, there's treatments, there's things that we can do, there's medications we can give. But with narcissistic personality disorder, there is literally nothing.
That's right. There's absolutely nothing. And when I wrote my book, Eden, the Knowledge of Good and Evil 666, that volume 1 and volume 2, this stuff has been going around a long time, because I wrote in that book that I think it was in 1486, there were two Dominican friars, and they were named Jacob Springer and Heinrich Kramer. They wrote Malleus Maleficarium, I think is how you say it. But, it still today is the most authoritative, actually, subject on the witchcraft and demonology. And they were saying back then, Springer himself was serving as a dean of theology faculty at the University of Cologne. And so if you look at that, and back in that time, 1486, they were saying and investigating that humans could be physically taken by demonic beings. In other words, inhabited by them. We're talking a long time ago. 1486, the study of demons.
Wow.
We're talking about a long, long time ago. And, the thing about it, even when King James, that wrote that did the translation for the King James Version, He even wrote a book
Mhm.
on demonology. A lot of people don't realize that he had a book on demonology. So
Uh-huh.
this stuff has been around a long time. It's just kind of been forbidden knowledge, maybe, or
Absolutely,
hidden.
it's been taboo for, you don't talk about this. Until recently, a family member with a psychological disorder or a personality disorder or some sort of mental illness was locked away in a sanatorium.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I always felt like that the schizophrenic thing, they really took them, they did the lobotomies on a lot of stuff, and that's targeting areas just to get something, to break down the system where the being can't really function through the body. They're blocking the ability for that being to be in the body. But I think that's the thing that really does concern me, is that in all the things that they did in trying to stop these demonic encounters, there's still these cases that are out there that people are dealing with these issues. And they're like you and I. They're thinking, why is it this person's acting like this? And why can't I figure out what the deal is? And why is it that if I try to do something to help, it turns itself around in such a way that I become the bad guy in trying to help somebody that clearly
Well,
is.
with Mark, it was first of all, he was an alcoholic. And he on the look, his mom even sent me an email one time apologizing to me for her son's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
His family was aware of this, but they never warned me until I was so sucked into it and in love with him and embedded into the family and the relationship that I had no other place to go. He had separated me from my family, he had separated me from my friends, and my whole world was him. And I can remember two things. Like I said, he was an alcoholic, and you could watch his eyes turn black. I knew when he was changing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I noticed this, and I realized, I was like, it's a demon. I knew it was a demon back then. Then I started, his mom and I would go out to lunch, and I would kind of start talking to her and try to see if I was looking for something that had happened in his life that had caused him to act the way he does.
Yes.
There was nothing. Joy, nothing. The only thing that remotely could have possibly triggered him was after his parents got divorced and his father moved up to Oregon, and he went with his father, and his father had gotten remarried, and their relationship had turned abusive.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only thing that had happened. I mean, he had a good life. His parents, I mean, I don't understand it. I looked for it. I could never find it.
Well, in the case with the ex-husband that I had, there was this sense of grandiose, of self-importance, and kind of a preoccupation with fantasy. And the thing that was most interesting about the family history, and I was like you, because I'm a counselor, you try to go back and find out where did this go all wrong at. And what he would constantly say was that his mother never wanted him to grow up. And she, even on her deathbed, told him to never lose his Peter Pan complex. And we're talking about a 60-year-old man having a mother say, don't lose a Peter Pan complex.
Who does what?
Yes. And so I felt like that there was something that may have had a play on that as an early age, with especially speech impediment, maybe might have led to making you feel better about yourself or something. But what I began to see is that there was these extremes of over idolization and then devaluation of people. He would overly like you and then totally devaluate you without any lack of empathy. And that was one of the things that when I was studying,
without a thought.
Yeah, without a thought.
Without
It would
even
go from A to Z in 5 seconds, and you would be like, whoo, here we were riding down the road and everything was fine, and now we're over here on left field,
right,
and I don't know how he
exactly.
got there.
You have no idea. Ari, what were you going to say?
Well, I got a perspective. I know a lot of these types of instances come from, the male being the narcissist. But flying under the radar, women have a tendency to have narcissistic tendencies as well. And we noticed that it's stemming from Jezebel, Ahab and Jezebel, in biblical terms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for myself personally, I dealt with that before. I was actually involved with someone for 3 years, in which I experienced that on a very, very high level, in which she could do no wrong and she
Mm-hmm.
could cheat on you and everything will be great.
That's right. They never
And it's
have
my
any
fault.
guilt.
No.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And, I believe in some instances it could be as traumatizing, if not more traumatizing for men,
Mm-hmm.
because men are made to be on this platform where they're the provider, they're the protector, they're the rock, they're the ones who be able to absorb all the punishment and brush it off and continue to move on. But in actuality, men has feelings especially for a woman, to be able to drag a man in and to be able to convince him that she's the center of the world. You can't have any friend, whether male or especially female.
Mm.
It can weigh down on someone's mental capacity and inflict a lot of mental trauma, in which they can eventually turn themselves into narcissists, in my personal opinion. I see that happening with people surrounding me, and from your testimony, Joy, and your testimony, Lori, you can see all of that happening from male perspective, and it doesn't even just extend to intimate relationships. We look at this when it comes to employment as well.
Yeah.
CEOs are
Yeah.
notorious to be narcissists, and major celebrities and stars of people of notoriety, they have that sense of narcissism in
They
there.
do.
And because of that narcissism, they will undercut you in order to get ahead and make you feel like it's your fault. Hence the gaslighting.
Yeah. The thing of it is, though, is when it comes to a female narcissist, once you start to demasculize your partner, that's when the mental abuse really starts taking a hold. My biggest fear after I not only lived through it once, but I jumped from that relationship that I escaped. Literally, the man that helped me escape turned out to be almost as bad. He wasn't as physically abusive, but he was just mentally just grueling.
Wouldn't you argue that
I
mental abuse is worse than physical abuse?
Oh, by far.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My biggest fear, and I used to have a friend that I would talk to about all the time. And I looked at her one day and I said, okay, here's what happened is I don't think my relationship, the second relationship, would have been as bad, but I was so damaged from the first one that I had turned into the abuser tendency in the second relationship. Now, looking back on it now, I see that. As I was in it, I didn't see it. I thought of it as protecting myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a friend that I would talk to, and I said, I feared another relationship because I feared of getting involved with a man who was normal, and I'm using air quotes here, and turning him bad.
Wow.
Well, it's because you did.
Go ahead.
The add on to your points, Lori. I'm pretty sure I shared this with you, but this is something I usually keep deep down inside, and I was going to talk about it, but I think this is a good time, and the Lord's calling on me to say something. I've been dealing with these types of people my entire life. Not from my mother. My mother was my rock, and she brought God into my life. But I had family members would just, you know, ridicule me, just claim their authority over me, thinking that they were better than me. And I had friends that would do the same and time again. I would put my trust in someone, and they would just make me feel like I'm nothing, I'm worthless.
Mhm.
And that extended to majority of the relationships I had with women. I mean, it
Mhm.
was just it's like a
Mhm.
curse that you can never break yourself. And I lived that way to the point where it caused me a very deep depression, to the point that it
Mhm.
almost took my life,
Mhm.
and on many occasions.
Mhm.
And it was a stronghold that led me that was hindering me in my marriage as well.
Yeah.
Thankfully, God has blessed me with a wonderful woman that Proverbs 31 woman who loves me, gives me words of affirmation, takes care of me when I need, and appreciates me as being the provider of this household. But up until then, I had family and friends that, for
Yeah.
the most part, made me feel like nothing, especially when it comes to something that's going on with you. Those
Right.
narcissists, when you have something that's wrong with you, they always point their finger back at you like it's your fault.
Oh,
You're
absolutely.
you're the
Absolutely.
you're in charge of your own destiny. You are
Yeah.
responsible for that. There's no circumstances involved in that cause you to feel this way or be this way,
Yep.
and that causes you to be in more of a headspin, to give you more of a depression,
Absolutely.
to dive you deep down. And how are you able to get out of that when you find somebody that is trying to prove their loyalty and trust for you to be able to feel the same way?
Yeah.
And I notice a lot of people who face that type of abuse, they don't have that capability to be able to re-interact themselves with society, be able to communicate effectively,
Mhm.
being able to even trust somebody more effectively.
Yeah, I was pushed at that point in 2000, September of 2010. I tried to commit suicide. He had pushed me to that point. I didn't know any other way.
To get
Uh,
out.
I can't even explain my headspace at that moment. I wasn't doing it for attention. I was doing it because I just felt I had no other choice. There was no pleasing him. There was nothing I could do. You know, Mark told me one truth when we were in a relationship. One. We were in a relationship for 5 years. He told me one truth. And you want to know what that truth was? We were laying in bed one night and he said to me, "Of all the girls, you're my favorite." Looking back on it now, I knew that he was cheating on me. I
Mm-hmm.
smelled it on him. I felt it on
Mm-hmm.
him. I had the physical proof in his phone. I knew that he
Mm-hmm.
was cheating on me. I had heard phone calls, and I chose to ignore it because I was so tied up in trying. I just felt, and this is something that I say a lot when Dave and I talk, if I could just love him a little bit more, he would wake up one day and see how much he was valued. But he never
Mm-hmm.
valued me like that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I mean, I went through the same thing. I heard every morning, has anybody told you you're beautiful today?
Oh
No.
God, yes.
Has anybody told you how much they love you?
You know what his answer was to that when he would say, have I told you today how much I love you?" And I
Mm-hmm.
would say no. He goes, "I will," and dismiss it.
Well, mine would go, I love you more than all the stars and all the heavens and all the universes and all every sand on
Mm,
every beach. And he would start naming all these little funny little beach names and whatever. And it was a ritual. It was a ritual every day. And then he would do that kind of stuff and then get up out of our bed and walk to his little
mm.
cabinet where he kept his medicine and come back in there and tell me, I've got to run out of town or out of town where we live. I'll be back later. and he'd gone in there and got his little Viagra pills that he didn't know I was looking at and keeping count of, and take off out the door.
Mm.
You know, so I was very aware of, you know, what he was doing behind my back, and the problem was, it was not only with male and female. I mean, it was not only with female, it was with male and female. And that became a real problem because I began to have some problems that I had not ever had. And when I went to my doctor, I was very concerned about it, and they put me on some medication, and it didn't clear up the problem. And so it became more of an issue and more of an issue. And there was no doubt in my mind that he had given me something. And so that became an issue that I knew. It confirmed for me what was going on, that I absolutely was dealing with someone that was doing a lot of bad stuff. And then, you know, having people tell you where they've seen them and what's going on, and let you know certain things. There was all this stuff that went just right along with what was happening. And then he started having some physical problems with swelling and things that in wrong places that didn't make sense. And so all of that just kind of blossomed into, you, like you say, you know, that this person is running around on you. And you know, it's pretty bad when somebody can walk into your bedroom and kiss you and tell you how much they love you and play that game to your head.
Yeah.
And knowing they're walking out the door to go to do something behind your back,
or walking back in after doing it behind your back, and treating you like nothing is even wrong.
Oh, he would call me and say, I'm over so-and-so, and I can stop and get you something to eat. What would you like for me to bring you to eat? Now, I'm going to come back and I'm going to cook breakfast. Now, don't you worry about doing it. Just lay in there in the bed and sleep. I mean, it was the way he could tell you something, play it to the hilt, like you were this wonderful, great person, and just, oh my gosh. I mean, he could even do the praying and pray, and then be praying 1 minute and then be cursing God within 5 seconds after he just did a prayer to God. I mean, the ability to flip from being in a normal kind of communication into something totally opposite, what was mind-boggling. And only if you understand schizophrenic behavior, bipolar behavior, and things like that, that you've ever been around somebody that can flip that quick. It would just catch me in such a situation where he would be asking for prayer and saying prayers for people, and then to get back at you sometimes if they get mad at you and they devalue you, he would go through an entire prayer for different people at night and leave me out. Wow. And I would go at the end of the prayer, I said, well, what about me and my cat Kissy? Oh yeah, you and Kissy, that's fine. Yeah, I forgot about it. Well, no big deal. I mean, it would be like, you had just had a prayer to God that seemed very whatever, but yet I was at the tail end. So it was a game plan. It was like you say, gaslighting. You know, one time you're really big and everything's great and you're doing this great work, and then he's telling you that he heard from God and God said you're going to be a great evangelist, and he's waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and have a conversation with God. And then at the same time, he would start having a conversation. He said he was with Satan. And you're laying in the bed with your eyes closed and you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, what am I hearing? You know, and then he would start answering himself in a different personality. In other words, he would be talking to God and then God would answer him.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, he would say, it'd be things like this. He'd say, God, is that you? Okay. Or do you live in heaven? And then this voice would go, no, I live on the earth. And he would, honest to goodness, he would go, well, God, do you look like everybody thinks you look, with like a long beard and hair? And he would go, absolutely not. I wear a little cap. And he would start describing something like George Burns that played, you know, oh God, or whatever it was. Honest to goodness. And the conversation would continue for like 10 or 15 minutes at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And you're laying there going, there's two different
What's
people in
going-
the bed with me. And he's,
Yeah,
and one of
what's
them,
going
one
on?
is talking, oh my gosh, it would be the craziest stuff. So,
So would you acknowledge, I mean, so do you pretend to be sleeping and you just ignore it in the morning, or how did you handle that?
I would just hardly be breathing. I would be so scared because because I know schizophrenic behavior. I know how people can switch. And then, like, for example, the young man that I had, when he would get in these other personalities, he one of the personalities was that he was a military person, and he would literally start hurting people, and we would have to hold him down till we got him or got the shot that he needed. So you never wanted to confront something, and because they always tend to have guilt and all kinds of hang-ups and carry guns and knives and things of that nature, you were a little bit afraid to do a lot of confronting. And, I don't know whether it was just to make you scared or what it was that would cause him to do that. I mean, he would get mad at God and in a prayer be praying and then stop and go, I'm going to get my 5 minutes with you one day. And he would say, for example, his son died, unfortunately, of COVID.
Right.
And he would go, I'm going to get my 5 minutes with you. And I know you're going to send me to hell, but I'm getting my 5 minutes. He would just be screaming at the ceiling with his fist. And he would be saying things like, you put your son on the cross 3 days, but you made my son suffer for 7 weeks. And I'm telling you, when he was like that, it was like 2 different people going from one thing to the next. It was just absolutely.
But it wasn't the death of his son that started this spiral.
No, he literally was doing these things. And like I say, from the schizophrenic work that I had done on certain clients, with the more anxiety that a person is in, the greater these things manifest. If he was not like maybe as stressed, he wouldn't be maybe as bad. But let him get stressed, and you'd be riding down the road in the vehicle, and out of the corner of my eye, he would be sitting over there driving his vehicle, having a conversation, like he's talking with gestures, like he's talking to somebody. And, I'm in the car with him. And several times he didn't hang up his telephone, and he'd be having conversations and he'd be answering himself in different voices. And you sound like there's 3 people in the vehicle.
Wow.
I'm just telling you, it was really, really weird. But one of the things that I think was kind of interesting in going back and looking at how you can be as a child and maybe things start happening. And that was one of the things we were talking about earlier. He literally had his mother called him Cassius Clay. And when he would act, I'm the greatest and I'm this and I'm that, he would just be talking about how great he was and how he did this and how many things he shot. He could remember the ball games and he had the most scores and who played against. I mean, it was just unreal. And he would laugh and say, she called me Cash. And she'd say, now Cassius. So it's almost like it had been there forever and ever. And so in looking at the disorder like that, you start seeing that if that's the case, he loved flattery. If he met women online, on Facebook, at the grocery store, and he would be, hey, darling, how you doing? You just so beautiful. And he'd just be acting like a 5-year-old. I mean, here's a supposedly intelligently educated person acting like he's 15. And I would catch him doing flattery on girls' posts that were young and saying, well, it's your birthday. Let's go out and have, a beer or do something. And I'm going, here you're supposed to be in church. You're supposed to be a Christian. and
You're
you're
married.
talking, yeah, and you're married, and you're talking to a young girl about let's go out and get a beer and go dancing and whatever, and calling them his queens and his princesses. I mean, it was just
That's bizarre.
unreal. So, when you go back and you try to look at what could have manifested itself to brought about all this, and the more I dug into the past as a young person, what I found was a consistent antisocial personality disorder more than anything, was that, and it had actually persisted into his adult life because it was a pattern of antisocial behavior that I know began before the age of 15.
And his mother sounds like she fed into it.
And when you see this, you find things, for example, talking about, cutting down all the stop signs all over a community with a chainsaw. And I'm like, why did you do that? Because I wanted to see if I get away with it. And then if I got caught, my daddy got me off.
Right.
Putting snakes in mailboxes and standing off out in a field, watching a man go to his mailbox and pull it open and a snake come out and throw him almost into a heart attack, and standing in the field watching somebody, or calling girls for dates and hiding and watching them come out looking for him, I guess, to come get him, and then start crying, and he was sitting out watching that.
Wow. What?
That's right. And then bragging about, having sex in the graveyards and doing it with boys and girls. And you're married to this person that's telling you this. Can you imagine what was going through my mind? And when I would ask the question, why did you do that? What were you doing? Everything. Use your imagination. And I would look at him and go, I'm sorry, I can't imagine that, because I would never, first of all, be in a graveyard at night, much less be doing something of that magnitude.
Right.
And so, this manifested with consistent lying. And I would know he was lying. He would look at me and lie, and I would know the truth. And I would be sitting there watching him lie like he was telling the gospel truth. I mean, it would be so good. And I'd know the whole time what he was telling me was a consistent lie. So, the fact that he didn't really like authority, and it appears to be that this was an early childhood problem, because he was very aggressive, apparently with drinking. And we talk about outrunning the cops, and then he was in a lot of different kinds of wrecks, and laugh about it, flipping cars, almost killing people. And there was a time that a cop was almost killed in an incident of high speed. He thought it was funny that they were all sitting at a station, and when they came up, he didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, Mark was the same way. He would get into fight at bars, and he would come home with bruises and cut up, knuckles. And I'd be like, what happened? He goes, just wouldn't shut his mouth.
They just major antisocial behavior. And, like putting sugar in gas tanks, even when he gets to be an older man, because he gets mad at people. I mean, who does things like that? Slash tires and do things to get even. And I saw this manifesting when he would have friends on the phone. He'd be talking to one about the other friend, and then he'd be telling that friend about this friend. Right. And then he'd be trying to plot with that friend to get back at this friend, and going on people's property and doing things behind their back, and then talking about their wives and how, they were after him when he was younger and that they were sluts. I mean, you just can't imagine the people that think he really likes them. And so when you see that, when I saw he was doing that to everybody else, I knew he was doing that same thing to me, Laura, to those people.
Yeah, see, and another thing is, you see these things and you understand and you realize these things are happening. And look at all the stories of a narcissistic's behavior are the same straight across the board.
That's right. They all fall in the same. That's right.
And that is not anything you would just mention about when you have somebody who has a personality disorder or a DID, every single patient, whether it's a physical or a mental diagnosis, there's something different about every person. But these narcissists are all the same.
Oh yeah, they all have the same setup.
It's like they get this book or this pamphlet, and they study from it, and they read it, and they do the same things, and but every single one of them has the same characteristics.
Yeah, and it's actually case book. I mean, these things are literally case book for every one of them. And going back and just thinking about how you can't just pretend it's not real, because they have these expressions and behaviors, and a lot of them have physical symptoms. Like he was always, something was wrong with him, so he was always the victim. And for example, you would go somewhere, and if we walked up and sat down just to have a meal, he would be, "Hey darling," and he'd be talking to somebody else while you're sitting there.
Yeah.
Like you're not even with him. And he would start talking about his father and what his father did, and like he was this somebody, but yet he was using what his dad did to make him look like whatever.
Right.
And then you would find out with his work history that he had certain people in place protecting him, because they were always putting out fires to keep him in his job.
Wow.
And how people couldn't really deal with him. It was absolutely amazing the more that I began trying to find out. Because really, Laura, when I first tried to start finding out, it was to try to figure out how to help him.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then, as you're so abused, and then he takes, and once he figured out that I had figured him out, then he devaluated me to his family and his family members, so that they would not listen to anything I was saying. What they don't realize is that the same things he was telling them about me,
he was telling you.
He was telling me about them.
Yep.
That
absolutely.
That his brother was this way, and that his wife he'd gone to bed with her, or supposedly done something with her. And then how his sister was this, and how he couldn't take it. I mean, in other words, he was devaluing them to me the same way he was devaluating me to them.
Right.
And then to keep us from talking, he would send out texts to them and say, "Don't call this number. If you get a call from this number, don't answer. I'll explain it later." He tried to stay in the middle of anybody making any communication and keeping you boxed in. And of course, I was a widow when I started dating him. I had no children. I had no family that lived in the area. I had one sister that lived away. So he had me locked in to just me that he could control. And then when I would try to reach out to his family, "Oh, no, we can't go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that with them. No, we're not going to do that." He would never. And then if I asked to go, like when a death had happened, he demanded I would not go. He was not going to take me. But he made them think
that you didn't want to go.
I didn't want to go. Yeah. He told me, "Don't get out of the truck." And then he told them,
she won't get out of the truck.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they got mad at me because I didn't get out of the truck, but yet he was the one. And for me to keep the peace in my house and have to deal with this demonically possessed person, I didn't want to get out of that truck, because I knew when I got home, he would be screaming at the top of his lungs. He would threaten. In fact, one of the funerals that I had to go to, he threatened me. He says, "If you talk to them at all, I will make you walk home from St. Mary's, Georgia. Wow. You will walk home." And that was like 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
I was literally scared to death to open my mouth at the place.
Mark had me. I lived in Phoenix. I was by myself. My family was all back east. There was nobody out there. All I had were friends. And so, he had that aspect of, and this was before cell phones. This was back in 2010. I had a cell phone, but you had to watch your minutes and, stuff like that. And he would tell his family. We always went to concerts, like all the time. In the summertime, it was a Wednesday night concert, maybe a Thursday, and maybe a Friday or Saturday night concerts, all the time throughout the summer. And I could tell when and this was over time. I didn't catch on at first, but over time, I could tell when he had other plans with somebody else. And I had found out, it's interesting how after the relationship ends, the truth starts coming out.
Mm-hmm.
How many people had come to me and was like, look, I should have I should have come to you before.
That's right.
I mean, a lot of truth came out. But how many times I would end up with a black eye and he'd be like, I can't take you out looking like that. You better have that cleared up by Friday or you're not going with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would try putting makeup on it. I mean, I'd wear sunglasses, all this stuff. I can remember one time I got dizzy, and this had nothing to do with him. I had gone out. He was in the shower. I had gone out and I had gotten fast food for dinner, and I'd driven back up. You have to hurry because God forbid if somebody in line takes 2 seconds longer and you're like, oh my God, he's going to be mad at me. Please hurry up, please hurry up, please hurry up. And I get back there and he's in the shower and the door's locked and they didn't have my key. And I'm like, oh my God. And I stood up on the stool to look inside to see if the door was open, if I could like knock on the window, and I got dizzy and I fell and I hit my head on the mailbox, the things where you put the newspaper, the old mailboxes.
Mm-hmm.
Have those little things that come up, you put the newspaper in. And I got myself, and he opened up the door and I'm all bloody. And he's like, oh my God, Lori, what happened? He pulls me in, he goes and he gets a washcloth and he goes, oh my God, people are going to think I did this to you. Well, geez, Mark, I don't know. I got bumps on my head from last week. I got a broken rib from 2 weeks ago. I got a broken nose from a month ago. Yeah, they probably will think you did this to me too, but I'm just thinking this. God rescued me from that relationship. 100% rescued me. He got another DUI. It was third DUI. It was 7 years in prison in Phoenix.
Wow.
And because I had already met him, he had 2 DUIs. And I told him when I met him through the relationship, I was like, if you ever get another DUI, I don't know what I'm going to do. He had made me so dependent on him,
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it'll destroy me. And he got another DUI. And so I fully believe God took him out of my life because I didn't have the strength to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a terrible feeling to feel like that you're locked into something. And he used my ministry against me. I mean, he knew that I was committed to my ministry, that I was committed to God, that when I gave, my marriage vows, that I put God first and I made a covenant with God. And he knew that I would keep putting up with it because I believed in the sanctity of marriage and not divorce. So he knew that I'd stay and put up with it because that's what he had kind of done in his other marriage. They just kind of lived apart according to him. Well, guess what? She was just trying to raise the children, under a bad situation. And he had gotten used to playing around on her. I mean, the stuff that he was doing behind her back with men and women was beyond words. And so when, like you say, after you get away from it, everybody and their brother comes out of the closet.
Oh yeah, they're all like,
tell you exactly what.
I didn't want to cause me trouble, but this is it, blah blah blah. I mean, he had friends of his brothers coming to help me clean our new house we had just rented. He had went and picked her up and brought her there. She helped me clean the house. He was sleeping with her.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I mean,
literally.
I mean, this is the thing that just blows your mind, is how they can do it and still look at you and smile at you while they're going to go do it and then come back like they've done nothing wrong. And to me, the guilt would get to him so bad that he thought bringing me a gift or bringing me food was
Right.
making up for
Right.
it.
Right.
You know, it was just like amazing.
It was him.
you
Yeah,
know,
there was him taking me to the concerts and to, letting me, drive the car when I was in college. I was taking college classes, and it was these things that eased his mind.
yes.
You know, and
He tried to bring things and buy things and do things to make you not be aware of what he was really up to.
right,
You know,
and
he would,
love bombing. They love bombing
yes.
you in the beginning. They love bomb you. They reel you in. They give you the sense. It's almost like, it's crazy because it's the same thing.
Over and over.
It's like a cut and paste template for these people.
Yes, and the thing about it is, it's just like mine has gone on, and he goes after one and makes her think she's just whatever, and at the same time, I know he's got 10 more he's doing the same thing to,
Yeah.
because people say, yeah, he's really seeing this one behind this, and he's talking to that one, but he's also making this. But each one of them are thinking they're the one.
Yeah, they're the
You're the
one.
one, and he's continuing to do that kind of stuff because he really likes playing to see if he can get away with it. Every time I ever ask him, why did you go out into somebody's watermelon patch and get 50 watermelons and then take them all over several towns and throw them out and burst them all over the road? Because I wanted to see if I get away with it. He had a fetish of doing things so that nobody would catch him, to see if he could get away with it.
That's crazy.
And he bragged about it. If I had done things like that when I was young, I would not have been telling anybody. I would be so embarrassed that I was that stupid as a child.
I'm embarrassed to talk about the things that that I've gone through with him, but I've had a number of years to process it. I mean, when it first happened, I mean, I like I said, if I could have just loved him a little bit more.
That's what I felt. What can I do? What can I do that will make this better? What am I doing wrong? I would beat myself up to no end.
Me too.
What am I doing wrong? Yep. Why is it doing this? And I could, as a counselor, as a minister, it was literally eating me alive.
Yes. Those words that night when I was laying in his arms, and he said to me, of all the women, of all the girls, he says, of all the girls, you're my favorite.
That's right.
That broke me, because I knew there was the one time in our relationship that he wasn't lying. He was coming clean with me without coming clean with me.
Yeah. I mean, the sexual aggressiveness, that's another thing, is that these people that have this behavior are highly sexually active. Yeah. I mean, majorly sexually active.
That's what I used to think that Mark was, looking back on it after the fact, I thought, well, maybe he was a sex addict.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt in my mind. I would ask things like, I was sitting on the chair with him, and he would bring up his Facebook page, and across you have these stories that go across the top of the page. There would be women with everything hanging out, and I would be like, what's that? How did you get? Oh, I don't know how I got that stuff. And I would be, well, I don't have that coming up on my phone.
I know. I don't have. Yeah. It's like, with girls.
Total denying all these places and how he was getting
girls
that
inboxing him all day long, and me going, I never have guys inboxing me. How come they pick you and not, what I'm saying? It's like weird.
Well, that's the thing is that there was something very much weird. And then when I would ask, what am I doing wrong? Am I not satisfying? What's the deal?
It's very defensive.
Oh, yeah. And then if you wanted to kiss him, oh, well, roll over and go to sleep. If he wanted to kiss you, then it was okay. But don't you do anything that was, to make him have to kiss you. I mean, just weird kinds of things. And I think one of the worst is that I began to know that there was a problem with homosexuality. And I asked a question very straightforward to him about what it was that I wasn't doing. And the next morning, he wanted to roll me over and put me with my back to him. And when he did that, I turned and looked at him, because I thought to myself, if you think you're going to do that. I'm sorry. That's just not one of those things that I believe is right in the eyes
Yeah.
of God.
Yeah.
And that answered my question, because I had prayed and prayed and prayed, that what is the deal? What is going on here? And then, I began to find out more and more about some of the things he did with young boys when he was, in this profession that he was doing, and that how he would use fingers and how he would blow kisses and do all this stuff. And he had gotten caught with a situation and try to make it look like it was something totally different, and taking young boys to, fishing trips because their daddies were not good. I have heard so much, but it still goes back to the fact that there is a sexual deviation, and there's something about whatever they're feeling within themselves. They are going after it 110%, and they will get whatever supply they can get.
Yeah.
So you can always know if you're involved with one of these people, as long as they're doing the love bombing, you're the top priority.
Right.
But as the de-evaluation starts happening and the gaslighting starts coming into play, they're searching out, or they've already got some other one that's playing for what they need at that point.
Right.
And they've kind of put you on the shelf while they are going and doing that. But they try to, build you up, and then they tear you back down. Build you up and then tear you back down in the devaluation stage. But like you say,
the second one that I actually married after Mark, he got me fired from my job, took my car away from me, took my phone away from me, and I was basically held hostage because, quote unquote, he couldn't trust me.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, that's what it is. They don't want you to cheat on them,
right?
Because they're cheating on you.
Those who can't trust can't be trusted.
That's right. They have, in other words, what they're projecting that you're doing is what they want to do.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's absolutely a projection on you for everything they're doing wrong. Yeah. And then I found that if you tried to confront, they would say, "I'm not going to talk about it. I'm through. I've already said I'm sorry."
Oh, he would turn it around and it make it completely not even about them, but all about you.
That's right. And then
Mark, where were you? Why were you? Why didn't you answer your phone today? I know that, and he'd be like, "Well, what did you do today? I see you didn't mop the floors today."
Mm-hmm. See, that was the one thing.
What were you doing all day?
That was the one thing when he would leave, he would say, "Now, if you need me, you call me." Well, I had a problem several times that was serious. Tried to call him for 3 hours. No answer. "Oh, well, I left the phone in the truck. I forgot." Always an excuse.
Yeah.
Never answer the phone. Try to text to try to find somebody, and have to call your next door neighbors to come and help you do something because he's not answering the phone. But yet when he left, it's like, "I have my phone with me now. If you need me now, you just call me." It was every day a promise like that, and never answer the phone. And then he would tell you he was going somewhere. And then if you had to go to town or do something and you just went by there, not there. Right. I mean, it was just obvious. And then people would say, "Well, I saw him at so-and-so and so." "Oh, really? What time did you see him there?" Da, 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 da. And then you would go, he'd come in and he'd say, "Well, I had to do this." "That's what you did?" "Yeah." And he'd just go through this whole scenario, and
it's a lie.
I mean, so many times I would ask a question just to watch his performance.
Yeah.
Because I would know it was all totally a lie.
Yeah,
totally a lie.
That I usually don't ask a question like that type of question. I'm not talking about like questions just in general, but if I'm asking you a specific question, like, "So why were you 15 minutes late?" I already know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I already know why you were late.
See, and that's why I was. One day he told me he'd gone to do something over in this other town, and he had gone to buy a gun. And the time that he tried to say that he had gone to the town, he wasn't even thinking that he didn't have enough time to go there and do what he said he did and get back. And so I was like,
Right.
you went over there and you did so and so? Oh, yeah. I said, well, that's kind of interesting, because usually it takes 30 minutes to go there. And if you did that, let's say 15. I said, you couldn't have done it in 45 minutes and got back. That's because I wasn't ready to leave. And I'm like, what is he doing home that quick?
Mm.
And then I hear all of this, and then I find out he just
Yeah.
went up the road to buy a gun. I mean, it just, when you know that you know that you know,
You know.
it is absolutely amazing how good they are. They're so good at it.
That's
You know
what I-
they've
and
been
that's
doing
what
it
I
a long
mean.
time.
This is not something that like a personality disorder or a dissociative disorder or schizophrenia or something like this. This is like well calculated, and it's the same across the board.
Yes,
It's
it is.
It's the same behavior. It's and just so people know, narcissistic abuse isn't just limited to physical and physical relationships with a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend. It is with friendships as well.
It can be friendships, and it can be mothers and fathers.
Mothers
I mean,
and fathers,
I
yeah.
have a friend that the mother was a major narcissist. And I'll be honest with you, if I had not run across somebody in my life that was a friend that had a family member be like that, I would not have had the slightest clue what I was dealing with. And they just were like, you know, because they were aware that I was going through some stuff, and they were like, you know, have you ever thought about it could be this? And when they laid that in my lap and I began to do the research on it, then I started feeling like, well, there's got to be something that I can do to help. There's got to be something that I can do to change this person or to make them aware of it. But it's like what Dr. Phil says, and also what anybody that deals with this on a daily basis, they say, if you take this person into counseling with you, and I saw this because I tried to do counseling with him. Everything was perfect. Everything was whatever. It was all my fault. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing about it is I unloaded on what had hurt me so much. Well, by golly, when you tell them in front of a counselor what is so bad, they use that against you. So in other words, going to counseling isn't to help them get better. They learn how to hurt you worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you cannot counsel them, because their intent is to find out what is wrong with you, so that next time I want to put stabs to you, I know exactly where to hit you. That is so demonic. That is beyond demonic. If I can figure out what will make you hurt the worst, and when I want to play you or gaslight you, I know where to hit you. And that's exactly why people say you can't put them in counseling with a spouse member or with a family member or with a friend. Because if that person opens up like you and I do and tell exactly what happened, they're going to find out how they're going to hurt you that much worse the next time around. I mean, they're harboring that resentment to get you. They are going to pay you back one way or the other. And they're going to do it behind your back as much as they can.
Yeah, Mark, when we first started dating, he wanted to know everything about me. He was so interested.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you know, my family life, my childhood. I mean, he was just so interested and so in you know, almost like invested in it. You know, you know, and I had told him everything. You know, I had told him about, you know, my past substance abuse and, you know, my past, you know, depression and stuff like that. And, you know,
you set yourself up perfectly to be hurt. Perfectly.
What's sad about that? What's sad about that is the fact that now, you know, not with Dave, but if I was ever to go into another relationship, God forbid, if anything should happen to my husband, which I will never go into another relationship. I already told him that I'm done. No, but I would never open up about my past to anybody else.
Because they can use it against you.
Yeah. You know, it's taken me 7 years. You know, there's still things that I tell my husband now. He's like, I didn't know that. I'm like, no, well, you know, I haven't felt comfortable in telling you these things. You know, I haven't opened up, you know, and it's sad because it affects your relationships down the line. Like I said before, I was afraid because from Mark to Bud, to Buddy, I was defensive. I think I was abusive. Um, and I kept saying to myself and looking in the mirror, because I jumped like from one into the other. Like Mark went to jail and he was taken away from me in January. In April, I moved in with Bud, and in September, I was married.
Mm-hmm.
That's how quickly that went.
Well, you were in such a hurt that you were looking to get some stability back.
I was spiraling out of control. I was so hurt and devastated, and people coming to me and everything, And I just kept thinking to myself, oh my God, I've become Mark.
Oh, wow. Well, sometimes abusive people, it's like in abusive families, if there's a person is abused, sometimes the person becomes the abuser.
Yeah.
I mean, that can become a cycle like that, which is very scary. And it's good that you were at the level of intelligence that you were to be able to pick up on it and try.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, and then when I tried to rectify it and, change the things and and then that's when I realized, geez, he's just like Mark,
Mm-hmm.
taking my phone away, I lost my job because of him. Mm-hmm. It was my fault, but I mean, he knew what he was doing. He had got me in such a state of mind. I worked for a loan company, and I did the loan applications. I gave, denied or approved your loans and stuff over the phone. And the banks that we dealt with had access to our floor of the building we were in. So when you walked in, you swiped your card and you could not bring your phone out. That was a breach of security, like to the nth level. I was floor manager, team leader. I was up for another promotion, and he had started an argument with me before I had gone out the door. He had continued it with me, sending me emails at work, knowing that I'm not supposed to get emails. I'm answering him, knowing I'm not supposed to be answering him. I go outside, take my break. I walk in with my phone. And my manager looked at me, and I looked down, and I just turned my head. I walked outside the door, took off my badge. He came walking out. He goes, "I'm sorry." I said, "Here's my badge. I know, because I got to let you go." Wow. I said, I know. Which, then puts you now I have no money of my own. Now I'm dependent on him for everything. Yeah. Now he has to pay for my phone. Now I don't get the keys to the car. He does the grocery shopping. I don't even leave the house, so that was, it was another spiral into another relationship like that. And It's crazy because you don't realize it. With Mark, I didn't realize the extent of the abuse until after I was out of the relationship.
Yeah. You will not feel it because you're trying to survive. It's like, it's after the fact. It's during the time you're going through it, you're trying to survive it. You're literally trying to survive. And I can look at the pictures of me during that time, and I can literally look at those pictures and know I was so stressed that I was just surviving. And only till you get out of it does it just give you that punch in the gut that, man, has this taken the wind out of you.
Yeah.
And it's because if you're a Christian, you want to look at, I've always been a person that looked at the good in everybody. And that's why I loved working with handicapped people, because a lot of people look at handicapped people and they look at the handicap. I looked at the person and said, instead of saying what, is the glass half full or half empty, I'm looking at what the positive things were that I could build on to make that person succeed. So when I meet a person or marry a person, I'm looking at the good things. I'm not just saying, here's bad, 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 bad. I'm just not typically a person that looks like that. I'm always looking for the glass half full instead of half empty.
Exactly.
And so I bypassed a lot of probably red flags that should have been like triggers.
Yeah.
I really felt sorry. He was handicapped. He always tell me things like, my other family members, they would walk away from me and I can't walk fast and I'm a half a man. I mean, he always used these things as
Yeah.
Mr. Victim
The woe
to
is
make
me.
me feel like, whatever I can do to help you, I'll be here to help you. I won't ever do anything. I'll be right there, carrot, all the surgeries, all the rehabilitation, driving back and forth, doing the bandages, taking care. I mean, literally saving him from COVID, dying from COVID. I mean, these kind of things I was constantly doing, helping, looking after, making sure, and him, carrying on. And then one day, Laura, he goes, everybody thinks I'm going to commit suicide because of what happened to his son. But you know what? I'm not going to kill myself. I love myself. Just let them think that, so they'll worry about me.
Oh my
And
God.
when he did that, I was like, Joy, then all this stuff that you're doing for him, he is just laughing behind your back.
Look at this fool. She's doing these things for me, and I do not need to be taken care of. But I deserve it.
Oh, yes. And making you feel like, well, I can't do this. And like you say, when they're love bombing you, oh, yes, let's sit on the deck and watch the stars. I never had anybody. I always like to look at meteor showers, and I never had anybody to look at meteor showers with me. I'm so glad you're into that kind of thing. Just anything to love bomb you, and then to lie to you to the point. And that's why it's so hard to get over, is that everything you heard coming out of this person's mouth for ever how many years you were involved with them, you now realize it was all a lie.
Yeah.
And to be able to process that is very, very difficult. And, sometimes I would even find him disassociating. In other words, if we were talking about something and he got disassociated with it, he would start laughing almost like a demonic person would do. I'm going to ruin your ministry, and make these little smirks and quirks on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, even catch him talking to himself in the mirror, drawing guns and saying he's going to kill people, and like that there in the mirror and he's practicing. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I want to mention is that in some of the research that I was doing, it said that these narcissistic people typically ate real fast. And one of the things I noticed, he could take anything and turn it up and drink the entire, I don't care if it was 24 ounces or whatever, he could turn it up and guzzle it down within seconds. And I'm like, you got to swallow sometime. And then the other thing was, at times he would just drink straight vinegar. And I would be like, that's a little weird. But the most unusual thing is, before he would go into these little personality changes, and I had heard that some people tend to make sounds like an animal. They make it like an animal sound.
Mm-hmm.
He would do something called, I can't even do it, but it's like, and we'd be going down the highway, or he'd be sitting watching TV, or come in from doing whatever. And he would start doing that. And I would go, what are you doing? Nothing. Yeah. What is that noise you're making? I mean, it would be just the weirdest thing. And I'd always notice it's like when he was either getting involved in something, or he was just going to change into something weird. And he finally said,
I can't help the sounds that come out of me. I don't have any control over that.
I finally asked him. He said, "Oh, it's I'm calling a baby gator." And I was like, "Okay, you're sitting in the house. You're not out by the water."
Right.
He said, "Yeah, I learned how to call a baby gator. I'm calling a baby gator." And so I thought, well, now this is a little weird. We're riding down the highway. You're calling a baby gator. Wherever, and you're calling a baby gator. And I would always notice that he was doing it, and he would start talking to himself. Just weird little things to start manifesting afterwards.
Let me ask you a question. When he would talk with himself, did he, as an example, would he start talking about you, how can I explain it? Okay, like Bud would sit up and he'd start rocking. He'd start rocking back and forth. And that's when I knew something was up. And then he'd be, she says that she was going to make coffee for tomorrow morning. I don't know if she did or not. And I'm like, who are you talking to? He's like, no one. And I'm like, well, you're talking. Are you talking to me? And then all of a sudden he'd be like, yeah, she said she was going to, and I'm like, and I know you're talking about me. But yeah, you're not talking about me. Did he ever do something like that?
Oh, he would get in the shower, and I would think he was trying to say, and I would get him to say, "What did you say?" Oh, I was just talking to myself.
Yeah,
he would be talking out loud, having a conversation.
Yeah, rocking back and forth. And I would be rocking back and forth while he was doing this.
Oh, and I would walk
escalate. He would get madder and madder and madder and madder as the conversation went on.
And if I interrupted him, and it would be like, no, I was just talking to myself. I would be in another room and I'd hear him doing it again. It would be out loud, just like you and I are talking right now. Yeah. It wasn't like I'm going, I need to make the bed now, or I need to do something. Right. It wasn't anything like that. It was a conversation.
If this was a full blown, like he was towards the end there, I would get so angry with him. I was like, so what are the voices telling you to do today?
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious.
And then I'd be like, see, I'm the aggressor now. I've turned into Mark.
Well, the thing is once they began to be aware that you were aware of what they were doing, then you become devaluated, and that became an issue to see if, there was a way to put you down. And he'd go like, oh, I just talked to myself. I talked to myself. And he would just blow it off.
I remember it's like an old wives saying, you don't have to worry about when somebody talks to themselves. You got to worry when they start answering themselves.
Well, he did that. And I'm telling you time and time again with two different types of voices. And that I'm going to tell you something. That was very, very, very scary.
Scary. It is
and
scary.
One of the, like I was mentioning, that making those sounds like that, when he would get nervous, he would make that sound. And one day a girl was doing my hair in the house and she heard him do it. And she had some bipolar problems and different kinds of things going on in her life. And she says, I used to make that same sound. And she walked in and she says, what are you doing? And I heard her in there. And he said, nothing. And he kind of got really like, what are you saying? And she says, I heard you making that sound. I used to make that sound all the time. He says, what you mean? And he was, and she kept on. And he said, oh, I just do that. It's like a baby gator call or something. I think he tried to tell her that. And she goes, no. She said, I always did that when I would get like hyped up and something was wrong with me. And I tell you, you could have heard a pin drop, because I'm thinking, finally somebody's actually confronted him, and he has nothing to explain because she's saying she made that same noise.
Right.
Well, she didn't know how to call a gator. I mean, I was like, but it was like always these lies about what was going on. And again, love bombing, gaslighting, making you feel whatever. Laura, that in no doubt in my mind has got to be a demonic entity inside of somebody. And I don't think that the medical establishment has any way of fixing it. And that's why you've got the Catholic Church adding all those people for trying to get, trying to do exorcisms. And then you got a bunch of medicine out there that somebody's making off of it because they know it's real, but they don't want the general population to know it. But you and I both know from what we've been through, ever since I came out on a show, I was asked to tell my story, and I did it. I got hit by his family, how terrible I was, whatever, how terrible this is. They have no idea that I know so much about them. If I was just start listing everything that man told me about them and what was going on, that it would blow their mind. His friends, if they knew what I heard and how he talked
their
about them.
deep, dark secrets.
That's right. They would
Yep.
flip out if
Yep.
those men knew how he talked about their wives.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. If
Their
they
wives,
just
their kids, their
knew
jobs, their friends, their wives,
everything. But
Exactly.
because I was willing to step out and try to explain what had happened, I really was hit by that crowd that I know the truth about them. You know, they think they only know about me. I know about them. And so I know the game and how he played it.
Yeah.
And so when I came out and was willing to do that and really told the truth about everything that had happened, and there's so much more, because I could go on for days and days and days like you can, because we live this on a daily basis.
This
I
is
had
my
somebody,
life. This is my story. This is what, this
yeah,
is-
and I kept a diary of everything that was happening every day, every hour, every second. I've got recordings, I've got pictures, I got everything. And somebody said, well, Joy, why don't you write a book? And all you got to do is do it like the Diary of a Mad Housewife, how they wrote that book. I could just take and get somebody to say, look, just start from right here. Here's the pictures. Here's the recordings. Here's, the day-to-day operations of what I was dealing with. Put it in a book and sell it.
There's a lot of people that could benefit from that, because first off, you're a fantastic writer. Secondly, you have the psychology behind it, and you've lived it.
I lived it.
I think
I lived it every day.
A lot of people don't buy it's psychological nonsense. It's doctors are witch doctors, and they don't know anything, and they get it from a book, and blah blah blah. But you lived it.
I lived it, and you lived it. And once you live it, and you talk to each other, it all adds up. It's confirmation. And so once I was able to say, when I was asked to do it, they felt like you said, I had the background, I had the knowledge in it, I lived it. Yeah. Tell it, because it may help somebody who's out there like I was going, what is wrong? And, I was a counselor and a minister and had it happen to me. So, the thing about it is I've had so many people since I released that send me private messages, send me tragic stories. I mean, I printed them off, upstairs when they send it to my regular email, printed it off just to sit and read. And I tell you, it brought tears to me every time I got something from somebody, because it was, again, confirmation for what I was going through. But
I was saying this. I mean, I felt alone. I thought I was the only. I didn't know what gaslighting meant.
That's
I had
right.
no idea what it meant. But as soon as I heard it and I looked it up, I knew that's what I went through for 5 years.
Yes.
That was it. While we've been live, I've gotten many messages from people. You guys aren't alone. You're really
That's right. You're not alone, and we're trying to bring this.
We see you.
Yes.
My inbox is open anytime one of you out there needs somebody to talk to. I'm here. I have a question that is, I can't answer it. Do you think a narcissist can be a Christian?
A narcissist, I don't think, can ever be a Christian. And the reason I say that is that I've not seen any narcissist that was not lying and running around, sexually involved and stuff, and all those things that the Bible says are wrong. And lying, it says you're
a narcissist could never put God before them.
That's right. And they're not going to be without lying. They're consistent every day, every second, with everybody they deal with. They're playing them. It is like looking at, when you read about Satan in Scripture, the lies, the constant lies, the deception, the trickery, all of that falls in line. And kind of like the spirit of Cain, am I my brother's keeper?
Right.
He kills Abel and he don't have a slight clue about it. They can hurt you, make you cry, make you hurt. You're looking after them, and they're going through all that stuff and let you get a little ailment. Well, you need to go to the hospital. Do they ever be nice and kind and want to bring you a glass of water and let's let me help you do whatever. Oh no,
Yeah.
honey, you are on your own.
I was down with sciatica for 8 weeks, and he beat me so badly and kicked me. I was down in the kitchen on the floor, and he kicked my back so bad. I
Oh,
thought he
boy.
paralyzed me. Literally thought the man paralyzed me. They have no compassion
At all.
whatsoever. No empathy, no
None.
nothing. I told him one time that I was not feeling well, and that I was having we had this was before I was diagnosed with lupus. I knew that I had an extreme allergy to the sun, and we were going to the lake for the week for the day. And I told him, I said, I need to stop at the drugstore. I need to get, the most highest sun blockers I can find. Conveniently forgot about it, even though I reminded him several times. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try to stay out of the sun. Woke up the next day, my eyes, I looked like a Klingon baby. My eyes were swollen shut. My forehead was out about 2 inches. And I said, I need to go to the hospital. He says, I need to go to work. Threw me the keys, said, take yourself to the hospital.
Wow, I can't believe that.
The day that I took the overdose of pills, he was at the house. He was leaving the house. He was going camping for the weekend with, and I'm using air quotes here, his brother. Okay.
Mhm.
And I took the pills. I took the bottle of tequila, and he said to me, he goes, well, I'm leaving. I hope when I get back on Sunday, I don't find a dead body on the bed, but you have a good weekend. I'll see you later. And he left the house.
Mm-hmm.
By the grace of God, a friend of mine showed up, and I was in the hospital for 48 hours.
Oh, Laura.
But yeah, that's no empathy, no sympathy, no emotion when it comes to another person but them. So how a person can be a Christian to put God before everything? They can't do it. I don't think it's
yeah, it's just so sad that, that people have to go through that type of trauma. I mean, I've been sitting back here just listening for a while, and my heart breaks for you too, and my heart breaks for those people who are experiencing this and in their relationships, as well as other aspects of their lives. You talk about, can a narcissist be Christian? You stated some reasons why, but one of the main reasons they cannot be Christian is that they cannot humble themselves. The Bible calls for us to humble ourselves and submit to God. The Bible also calls for us to love our wives as Christ loved the church.
Amen.
And if you can't do those two things, especially while in marriage, then you aren't serving the Most High God. And you
it's
will
like
not
something
earn
in their brains aren't wired to be able to do that.
Right.
Well, it's a really big phenomenon that is getting worse because of the numbers of people that are having the same experiences that we're having. And it really does concern me that a lot of people will turn to alcohol and drugs to deal with it because they can't take it. I mean, I've run into so many women who are in counseling because they are literally about to go off the deep end.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, that the only way is for them to get out of it, totally get out of it. But, it's the bad thing when somebody can play you to the point that it drives you to almost kill yourself, like you experienced. I think that it was so devastating to me. I mean, literally, I think it's because I was just hanging on. I mean, every night, all during the night, there would be tears. I mean, I remember my pillow would be just wet in the morning where I had cried all night, and not loud because he would get mad if he thought you were crying.
Oh,
so I would sit there, tears would be running out of my eyes, and I would just be repeating, "Deliver me from evil, Lord. Deliver me." I would do that all night long because I would be so scared of him.
Yeah. I mean, and God did deliver me from mine. Like I said, he got the He got the DUI, and he went away for 7 years. But the abuse didn't stop there, because then his family picked up where he was and left off. And, they would come to the house all the time and try to catch me doing stuff, calling my job, doing all these things, till finally I was enough. I can't do this anymore. And it's hard, because I know it's a lot of, when you're in an abusive relationship, let alone an abusive relationship with a narcissist, and you have children, and you don't have the support of a family, or you don't have support of friends, it's hard to get out.
Yeah, it is.
Especially when you're alone, you don't have anybody.
I have one case that I'm trying to deal with, that's in Florida, and he's with prostitutes and everything else, and financially can't break, he literally financially put her in a mess, and she can't get her money, and it's a mess. I mean, women get really caught up into things, and you can be abused and abused and abused, and you can't walk away from it. I'm thankful, like you are, that God provided me a way. And when he would come at me all those times and, grab a hold on me and pull, like the phone out of my hand if I was trying to call somebody, because he said that they said so-and-so. If I said, well, let me call him, he'd go nuts, because he didn't want me calling those people. He didn't want me calling his son. He didn't want me calling a lady down at a drugstore. He had lied, and I had caught him lying. When I went to do that, he would just come at me screaming, tearing the phone out of my hand, literally scaring me to death, like he was going to really hurt me. And so I would just go kind of like, in a way, kind of like relaxed, and I would try to distract, to look at something, and he would say, you didn't see anything out there, and just to keep him from hurting me or hitting me. And I tell you, it came down to the point that he came at me one time too many, and then I picked up the phone. I had enough internal fortitude to pick up the phone and say, never again, and called 911. And the police came, and he immediately left before they got here. But let me tell you, the one thing he made sure he got, now you're going to just crack up.
His Viagra.
He went and got that Viagra and run out the door.
I knew it.
He supposedly had heart problems and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
And he had $1,000 he spent on all that stuff. So I guess he was going to make sure he got his little supply if he had to go out the door. And he didn't take nothing else but that.
Unbelievable. Why did I?
And then wanted to know, can I come back and get my medicine? Can you put it in the...
You should have grabbed your medicine when you grabbed your Viagra.
It's so funny, because I had a friend that's a doctor, and they were like, if he could take all of that, there's
nothing wrong with his heart.
That's right. There was nothing wrong with his heart. So don't worry about putting the medicine out in the mailbox.
Aside from the fact that he has no heart, that he's got an empty spot where that heart is supposed to go.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, I certainly hope you do write the book, even if it's just like a paperback, small kind of just, I don't know, just something to put it out there.
Well,
did he try to hurt your ministry afterwards?
Oh, yes, he did. He did. And like I say, when we had to go for the temporary order to keep him away from me, he just unloaded in the courtroom on things that you can't even imagine. I mean, just said things.
Did he throw your past work? Your writings, like, she believes that,
Oh yeah. He
make
did.
You look like you're the crazy one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he told me, he threatened me all the time with that. I'm going to ruin your ministry. But yet, during the love bonding phase, listened to every one of my shows, wrote great reviews on Facebook, wrote a great thing for me to go to get my deacon ministry thing. I mean, I've got all these things that he wrote and how great I was. And then only when I found out all this stuff that was going on and started trying to confront him, and like I say, at first trying to figure out how to help him, and then realized there was no way to help him. In other words, he was going to end up hurting me before it was over with. So I'm thankful that I was able to step out. And, that's the hard thing. It's being able to step out.
In another relationship?
Do what now?
Is he in another relationship?
Oh, listen, he's got girls that
Yeah.
he's telling all this stuff to. You just beautiful. I mean, you just can't imagine what people have sent me. They say, I just want you to know what your ex-husband is telling all these other ladies. And half of them, he was already flattering and already knew it while we were married.
Right. Yeah, you already knew.
But there's a couple that think, oh, he's just eating them up. But behind their backs, I know of other girls he's doing the same thing with.
Yeah. And see, that's I live with guilt. And I don't know if it's survivor's guilt or I don't know what it is, but I literally shed tears for the women that he's hurting now.
Oh yeah, and that's what I try to do. I try to put stuff out there to make people, if they'll listen to me, they won't get into this.
You're just the crazy ex-wife.
Oh yeah, and that's the way that's the way he played his other ex-wives.
Yeah,
I mean they were crazy,
exactly.
and then once you get to meet them and know them, you're like, them cats not crazy. There's nothing wrong with them. So what you learn how he's played the game. So I've been trying to say, look, I'm willing to be talked about, put down, whatever, to try to tell the truth to somebody. Because if somebody had come to me, and I'm going to tell you something, I did everything I could do to try to find out everything I find out about him before I married him. Everybody was like, great person, daughter. I mean, wonderful stuff. There was nobody out there like me going, here's the problem, big girl. Now, if you want to get into it, I've told you what he's about. Yeah. But the problem is I didn't have anybody do that. But I'm going to tell you, Laura, I'm trying to warn. If you don't want to listen to me, then okay. But I'd have given anything if somebody had told me this, because I didn't investigated it. Before I got married, I would have done a total investigation.
Is Mark's family knew what he was. They knew about the other girls that came before me that he did the same thing to. I got, the email from his mother apologizing to me on how horribly her son treated me, and she just had no idea why they treated me like that. That's so right. I mean, again, his family pulls you into it. I think they were protecting him, and it hurts my heart to know that there's a person out there right now that may feel like I did for those 5 years.
That's exactly how they're going to feel, and it's a terrible, terrible feeling. And if I can stop it, I'm trying to stop anybody that's going through stuff like this from getting into this thing like I did. Because literally, if somebody had come to me and said, here's the problems, I'd have had him investigated. I actually had him investigated, but the people that were asking the questions couldn't find out anything because nobody was willing to open up. But if they'd have run across somebody like me, oh yeah, then I'd have opened up the book. Because the thing, he was so dumb enough to let me read letters that his ex-wife wrote to his children. And you can't imagine, she was talking about what a terrible person. He had stole the letter and let me read it about his children and what she was trying to tell his children about how bad he was. He literally let me read that. And but she was the bad guy. She was the crazy person.
She was the crazy one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking about this today. Because I know when we touched on it last month a little bit, a lot of people in the chat room that kind of, gravitated to their comments. And, I think they just wanted, to hear a little bit more of the talked about. And, guys, you're not alone. We see you. We hear you. We're here. We do survive. I'm a survivor. I'm not a victim of his.
And the thing about it is, if you find people that have gone through this and you talk with them, it will help you so much. I mean, that's the thing about trying to do this. And that's one of the main reasons I'm doing what I'm doing is I don't want anybody to feel what I went through. I would do anything to keep you from feeling the pain of loving somebody and having them constantly never tell you the truth and make you believe something that was a total lie.
Right. Exactly.
Laura, do you mind if I say a few things?
Sure.
Couple verses pulled
let me
up.
just put this real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you, Ernie. We have a women's group on Facebook that is active. I'm going to put the link in the description below. If you guys, it's a closed group. Nobody is going to know that you're writing anything. Nobody's going to see your posts. If you need to talk, if you want to talk, there's the link. Join the group. Come on in. Debbie's in there. I'm in there. There's a lot of us that are survivors that are in there that we can all talk. Go ahead, Ernie.
I also wanted to say too, for the men who suffered from this as well,
Yeah.
that there are good people here that are here for you, that went through it. Myself personally, I went through it. I suffered the effects, and through the blood of Jesus Christ, I have overcame it. So I just want you guys to understand that this is not an attack on men.
That's right. It's not.
No,
It's
not at all.
absolutely, it can be men or women, and they do exactly the same thing. It's nothing
Right.
but lies.
Right. And this broadcast is pretty much to outline what to look out for when it comes to narcissistic behavior. I got a couple of scriptures that I pulled up that I wanted to share with you all today. Just as something to take with you home. Okay. The first couple of verses talks about this type of behavior, and we're going to see an increase of that in the coming days, as Joy mentioned earlier in this broadcast. First, I would like to go over Proverbs 11, verses 2 through 26. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of their treacherous destroys them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, for righteousness delivers from death. The righteousness of the blameless keeps his way straight, but the wicked falls by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the treacherous are taken captive by their lust. And that's one major point, is lust. Narcissists are addicted to lustful behavior.
Absolutely.
They relish on themselves and not relish on others. And because they don't have the love for others, they do not love themselves. And in 2 Timothy 3, I'm going to outline a couple passages from verses 1 through 17. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for peoples will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having an appearance of godliness, but denying its power. To avoid such people. As Dr. Joy and Lori mentioned, in this type of relationship, I know this is hard to do. I suffer from this as well. Get out. And for those of you who are in relationships and maybe going through some marital issues apart from narcissism, take heed to these couple verses here. 1 Peter 3, verse 7. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the women as the weaker vessels, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. If you have an unhealthy relationship, folks, your prayers would definitely be hindered. God has designed us to be companions with each other, to complement one another. Why do you think he took the bone from Adam's rib to make a woman? Because men need a companion.
Amen.
In Ephesians 5, verses 25 through 28, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Those are profound words that the book of Ephesians stated in these verses. Christ loved his church. The church was his bride. We are to honor our wives exactly like that. The protector, the cleanser, be the spiritual leader, to provide the word of faith to her, to uplift her. If you do not love your wife, you don't love yourself. Regardless, if you think you are better than your wife, no matter how much better you think of others, if you do not love, you do not love yourself. You hate yourself. And by that hate, demons have a strong hold over you. And if you don't repent, if you don't cast away those demons out of your soul, you will suffer at the time of judgment. That's all I have to say.
That's absolutely the truth. 100%. Joy, I'm going to put the link to your website.
Yes.
Again, in the description area for everybody to get your books.
Thank you.
And when does your new book come out, hon?
Well, I'm hoping that it'll be out within the next month, because I'm going to be at a conference in Atlanta on May the 26th, 27th, and 28th that I'll be discussing that book. And so the publisher says it should be out before then. And it is really about almost a 300-page book. It's called Beast Mark, End of Days, Breaching the Pineal Gland.
Nice.
And it's really very, very much research, and took about 2.5 years to write. So
very good.
I'm really glad to get that one out of the way and out for people to be able to understand about this mark of the beast that's coming.
I can't wait for it to come out. I will definitely have you on before then also, and we'll try to get that information so people can get that book. I can't wait to get it. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us tonight. I really want to thank you for sharing your story with us. You and I have been friends for a long time. I've watched you go through so much in the number of years that we've been friends, and I got to say, it broadsided me to know that you were going through that. So.
Well, sometimes it's like we've done all this research for so long, and to have something similar happen to each other, it's kind of amazing. But, confirmation about things and understanding, like you say, that we were not alone, even though we thought we were at the time. If we can help other people through what we had to encounter, I mean, that's what I'm all about. The other thing I want to make sure people understand too is these narcissistic people will actually tell you that, oh, they're, you've come along and now they're saved. Be very careful about what they tell you, because it's to flatter and make you think they're one way when they're not.
Correct.
But that thing about being saved, and you're the person that helped me be saved, be very cautious, because I mean, everything that I've read is that narcissistic people can never be helped.
Exactly. The meme comes to mind. There's a meme where it shows a half of a woman's face, and it just shows her ear, and the snake is wrapped around her ear, and he's whispering in her ear. And that always reminded me of my time with him.
Yes, exactly.
I like to thank both of you ladies for sharing. I know this wasn't easy, but you're allowing God to use you as his vessel to spread this message to people who need to hear. And just by looking at the chat, it was definitely a profound message that hopefully that will resonate. And I hope those of you in chat that are listening will share this to others who are suffering the same fate.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a way out, and that is through the precious blood of our risen Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Exactly. All right. I want to thank Joy for joining us as always. We will have her back next month. I don't know what the topic's going to be, but it's always a good conversation when Joy's in the house. So I can't wait for that. I want to thank everybody in our chat room. I want to thank all of our moderators. And again, the link is in the chat room. I also put it in the description area below. We do have that Facebook group. We will be starting a men's group. So if you're a man out there, please just be patient. We will get that up and going for you. But we're there for you. You are seen. You are heard. And we love you. And until next time, remember, eyes open, no fear.